Once, a man walked through a sunlit town, but a heavy shadow clung to his every step. He had done wrong, and the shadow was his constant dark companion. He ran to brighter streets, but it only grew darker. He tried to ignore it, to laugh louder and smile wider, but the shadow remained, a silent accusation at his heels. He thought to himself, if only I could outrun this darkness, I could finally be free. But the faster he ran, the more it stretched, clinging to him like a second skin. One day, exhausted, he stopped. He turned to face the town square, confessed his misdeeds, and asked for forgiveness. As he spoke the truth, he felt a strange lightness. The heavy shadow, once so menacing, began to fade. He finally understood. Before you try to hide your mistakes, remember this. The weight of guilt only lifts when the light of truth is allowed to shine. One night, a village huddled in fear as a relentless storm raged. Thunder cracked like the sky was breaking, and the wind howled, threatening to tear their homes apart. A young man, convinced the end was near, lamented the chances he'd never taken. He thought to himself, if I had known this was the last night, I would have lived so differently. The storm raged on, and with each gust, his regrets grew heavier. When the first light of dawn finally broke, he wondered what remained of his world. With a sliver of hope, he looked outside. He saw the destruction, but he also saw his neighbors, already working together to clear the debris. As the sun climbed higher, he felt a surge of resolve. Oh, brother, he thought, this storm was a terror, but it wasn't the end. He felt a profound sense of relief as he joined his community. He grabbed a shovel and began to work, his heart full of a quiet promise. If today is here, he murmured with gratitude, yesterday's fears are gone, and I can begin anew. Too often we wait for a storm to pass, but he realized with clarity that he was the one who had been waiting, not living. Before you give up, think about it. Maybe a new day is all you need. One day, a man was walking down a long road carrying a heavy sack filled with all his worries. Each step was a struggle, the weight pressing down on his shoulders, his breath growing short. He saw others walking freely and thought to himself, if only I were as strong as them, I could carry this burden without a single complaint. He stumbled and fell. A passerby stopped and picked up one of the stones that had spilled from his sack. Then another person did the same. Soon, a small crowd had gathered, each person taking a small piece of his burden. The man stood up, the sack now feeling almost weightless. He looked at the people walking beside him and realized the truth. His sack wasn't empty, its weight was just shared. Before you try to handle everything alone, think about it. Maybe the burden is meant to be shared. One day, a young carpenter was building a small shed, sorting through his box of nails. He picked up a nail, saw it was bent, and tossed it aside in frustration. Useless, he muttered, reaching for a perfectly straight one. He worked all afternoon, hammering nail after nail, but one particular joint just wouldn't hold firm. The wood kept splitting under the force. He remembered the bent nail he'd discarded. With nothing to lose, he picked it up and hammered it into the stubborn joint. The bent shape gripped the wood from a unique angle, holding it together with surprising strength. He stood back, looking at his work. The joint was finally secure, stronger than any other. He stared at the nail, a small, twisted piece of metal. I thought it was worthless, he whispered to himself, but its flaw was its greatest strength. Before you dismiss something as flawed, think again. Maybe its imperfection is what makes it strong. Once there was a star, the brightest in the sky, who basked in the admiration of the world below. He believed the applause was his forever, a constant fire fueled by his own brilliance. He never noticed the other quieter stars. Then slowly his light began to dim. The cheers grew faint, replaced by a deep, echoing silence. He looked around and saw that most had turned their gaze away. Only a few remained, their eyes not searching for his fading light, but for the humility they now saw in his shadows. He realized they admired his quiet grace more than his former blaze. As he looked at the world, he saw it not from a stage, but from the ground. It was only then, in the quiet dark, that he understood his true place among the constellations. Before you seek the spotlight, remember this. Maybe true brightness isn't about how much light you give, but how gracefully you learn to fade. Once there was a star who shone brighter than any other in the vast, dark sky. He bathed in the endless cheers and applause from the world below, believing his light was eternal and his place was forever fixed. He never noticed the other, quieter stars around him. But slowly, inevitably, his brilliant light began to dim. The roars of the crowd softened to whispers and then to silence. He was alone in the quiet darkness, his glory a fading memory. Yet a few stayed, not for his faded brightness, but for the quiet humility they now saw in his faint glimmer. He learned that true admiration wasn't for the light he projected, but for the warmth he shared. Before you crave the spotlight, remember this. Pride burns out, but humility glows forever. One night, a village held a grand celebration with festivities planned to last until dawn. A young drummer, eager to impress, took center stage. He began to play with thunderous force, his hands a blur, his rhythm filling the air with explosive energy. The crowd cheered, captivated by his power. But soon, his strength waned and his beat faltered until he could play no more, exhausted. As he stepped away, an older drummer sat down, playing a soft, simple beat. He played steadily without flourish through the long hours of the night. When the sun rose and the celebration ended, the thunderous start was forgotten. But the gentle, steady rhythm lingered in everyone's hearts. It had become the pulse of their memory. Before you chase explosive moments, think about it. Maybe the quiet rhythm you build is the one that truly lasts. One day, a young artist was struggling to find his style. He spent his days in the city's grand museum, meticulously copying the works of the masters. He mimicked the brush strokes of one, the color palette of another, and the composition of a third. He thought to himself, if I can just paint like them, success will surely follow. He sold a few copies, and the praise he received for his technical skill only fueled his desire to imitate. One afternoon, as the sun cast long shapes across the floor, he looked down and saw nothing beside him. His own shadow was gone. In his relentless effort to become everyone else, he had lost the very thing that made him unique. He was just a collection of borrowed pieces, a ghost without a form. Before you try to be someone else, look closely. Maybe the person you're meant to be is the one you're leaving behind. One day, a builder was hired to construct a small house under a tight deadline. To save time and money, he used cheaper materials and built the walls thinner than usual. He finished the job quickly and the house looked perfect, gleaming under the sun. He proudly thought to himself, "This is good enough. No one will ever know the difference." The owner was pleased and the builder collected his payment. That very night, a fierce storm rolled in with heavy rain and powerful winds. When the builder passed by the next morning, he stopped in his tracks, horrified. The house had completely collapsed, its thin walls nothing more than a pile of rubble. He realized with a sinking feeling that he had not just built a weak house, but had also shattered his own reputation. In his haste to finish, he had built a foundation of deceit. Before you cut corners, think about it. The shortcuts you take today might lead to your downfall tomorrow. One day, a man found a small, glittering coin. He clenched it tightly in his fist, fearing he might lose it. Day after day, he held his hand closed, guarding his tiny treasure. He noticed that the world around him seemed to offer so much, but his hand was too full to accept anything. His hand grew stiff and tired from the constant grip. When he finally opened his palm, intending to just look at his coin, it fell from his numb fingers. As he stared at his now empty hand, a passerby smiled and placed a beautiful, smooth stone in it. He gasped with surprise. There was an entire world of gifts he had been unable to hold. "If my hand was full," he moaned in despair. "I couldn't receive anything new." Too late to reclaim his coin, he realized with relief that giving, or even just letting go, was the only way to truly gain. Before you hold on too tightly, think about it. Maybe what you're meant to receive is waiting for you to open your hand. One day, a farmer was rushing his cart to the market with several long miles ahead of him. He loaded it with his finest produce and set off down the dusty road. He noticed that one of the wheels was wobbling and making a terrible noise. He thought to himself, "If I stop now, I'll be late and lose my best spot." So he cracked his whip and urged the horse to go faster. The squeaking grew louder. As he rounded a bend, the wobbly wheel groaned and protested. He ignored it, focused only on reaching the market. With a final splintering crack, the wheel shattered. The cart collapsed, spilling his produce all over the road. As he looked at the ruin, he moaned in despair. His haste had cost him everything. He realized with regret that he was the impatient one, the reckless one, the fool. Before you rush ahead, think about it. Maybe you are the one who is unbalanced. One day, a proud young student approached a wise master seeking profound knowledge. His mind was full of preconceived notions, and his hands were clenched with assumptions about what he already knew. He stood before the master, ready to receive wisdom, but the master simply looked at him. "Your hands are full," the master said calmly. "I cannot give you anything until you empty them." The student was confused. He thought, "What does he mean? I came here to learn, not to be told I'm unprepared." He argued and debated, trying to prove his existing knowledge was worthwhile. The master listened patiently. Finally, tired and defeated, the student unclenched his fists, metaphorically emptying his hands. He admitted he knew nothing. It was only then that the master began to teach. Before you assume you know everything, think about it. Maybe your own pride is what's holding you back. Once, two men lived in a small town, both known for their beliefs about what was right. One man would stand in the square, his voice booming as he argued his points, defending his version of the truth against any who disagreed. He was loud and relentless. The other man simply went about his days. He worked, helped his neighbors, and always acted with integrity, his life a quiet testament to his principles. For a long time, the town was swayed by the loud man's passionate speeches. But as years passed, they saw the quiet man's unwavering honesty. They began to seek his counsel, not the debaters. It dawned on them that the loud man fought so hard because his truth was fragile. He had to convince others and himself. They realized with a quiet clarity that the one who lived the truth didn't need to shout it. Before you raise your voice to prove a point, think about it. Maybe the truth is best spoken through your actions.